Spend any time on today's Chinese internet, and you'll feel it immediately, a strange mix of noise and emptiness. Platforms once meant for curiosity and learning are now dominated by emotional spectacle, lifestyle theater, and tribal rage. The content is louder than ever, but says less than ever. Xiaohongshu is full of performative consumption and manufactured aspiration. Zhihu, once a knowledge-sharing hub, is now overrun with identity warfare. Bilibili and Douyin flood users with a torrent of short videos, visually stimulating but intellectually barren. What used to be a space for dialogue has become a hall of mirrors. At first glance, this looks like an algorithm problem or a design flaw, but the deeper you look, the clearer it becomes. This is not just a digital crisis. It is the surface symptom of a broader cultural decline. The Chinese internet is collapsing because the society underneath it is running out of meaning, and what's happening in China may only be the beginning. The disappearance of meaning. What we see today is not just the rise of low-quality content, it is a collapse of the infrastructure that once supported public reasoning. The shift is subtle but total. Platforms no longer reward clarity or complexity but instead select for speed, emotional charge, and repeat engagement. Rage travels faster than thought, mockery outperforms sincerity. The more polarized and reactive your message, the better it spreads. Over time, the ecosystem reshapes itself. Truth becomes just another form of content. The value of knowledge gives way to the value of attention. The internet stops being a medium for understanding and becomes a marketplace for stimulation. In China, this shift has happened with alarming speed. Why China feels the collapse first. Every country is grappling with the tension between information and meaning, but China stands out. The decay is deeper, faster, and more chaotic. That's not a coincidence. China has the largest population on Earth, but limited per capita resources. Competition is fierce, upward mobility is shrinking, and trust in institutions is thin. These conditions turn the internet into a pressure valve, one of the only places where people can seek status, expression, or emotional release. But the space is unprotected. There is no buffer of civil society, no independent press culture, no mature public sphere to mediate the chaos. So platforms amplify what is already raw and volatile. Insecurity, resentment, spectacle. The result is not dialogue but crossfire. In such a climate, sincerity becomes dangerous. Nuance is interpreted as evasion. Expertise is seen as arrogance. Everything is personal, everything is political, and everyone is exhausted. Algorithms don't create emptiness, they exploit it. It would be a mistake to say the internet caused this decline. What it did was reveal and accelerate tendencies already present. In China, where decades of rapid development weren't matched by deep institutional reform, public life remains transactional and brittle. Without shared norms or enduring institutions, people fall back on instinct. Defend your tribe, monetize what you can, keep your guard up. Trust becomes a liability, idealism becomes naivete. The algorithms simply reward what the culture already offers. Platforms didn't invent cynicism, they just discovered it performs well. The bigger picture, a civilizational pattern. It's tempting to treat this as a Chinese problem, but that would be a mistake. The trends we see in China, platform decay, emotional overload, epistemic chaos, are emerging everywhere. America's internet is increasingly tribal and hostile to expertise. Europe struggles with its own populist disruptions and algorithmic fragmentation. Across the globe, we are drowning in information and starving for meaning. Philosophers saw this coming. Oswald Spengler warned that every civilization eventually shifts from growth to formalism, where culture becomes routine, creativity stalls, and society begins to simulate its former vitality. Ortega y Gasset described a modern era dominated by the mass man, resentful of complexity, dismissive of elites, and deeply susceptible to oversimplified narratives. And what we see today is perhaps even worse. Not just cultural stagnation, but extractive acceleration. The internet doesn't just distract us, it drains us. Our time, our attention, our emotional bandwidth are all being mined for engagement. But engagement with what? What began as a space for connection now functions as a system of emotional exploitation, not out of malice, but because it works. So what can be done? Nothing we build will last unless we remember why it matters. That's the paradox of late civilization. We have more tools than ever before, and yet less faith in what they're for. It's unlikely we can reverse the trend at scale, but we can resist it in miniature. We can choose not to perform for algorithms. We can choose clarity over provocation. We can speak sincerely, even when no one rewards it. We can ask real questions, instead of repeating scripted answers. These are not grand gestures, but they are the small acts of defiance that civilization is made of. If meaning is to survive the flood, it will be because someone, somewhere, refused to let it drown.